Nate is here. He's calling in from sunny San Diego. I assume it's sunny, rainy, sunny.
Was raining, now sunny.
Okay, I saw rain. Um, and he graduated in 2023 from Syracuse University. And he was interested in visual effects and post-production and tried a bunch of stuff while he was in school and has now found himself kind of like still trying stuff out in LA and has found the world of visualization. And it seems like it's a good fit. So Nate's here to tell you all about this kind of like newer part of the industry that might be good for many of you who are interested. Go for it,
Awesome.
Nate.
Thanks for the intro, Shayna. What she regrets or what she did not mention is that I actually graduated out of the Shayna Holmes University of Visual Effects, and that was the most impactful thing while I was at Syracuse. So props to Shayna. She's awesome. And yeah, the reason why all of us are here. So um, thanks for taking the time out of your guys' busy days to come to SUP. It's really, really a cool meeting that we get to do. And I'm just glad that you guys are all taking advantage of it because you can learn a lot here and really advance yourself in your careers and in your studies just by coming to this. So, yeah, thanks you guys for showing up. So today I'm talking about post-production visualization. So this is going to be everything from tech viz to pre-viz and post-viz. And I'll get into what all of those mean. This is me. This is the most important slide. I was formerly a compositor and visual effects artist turned coordinator. So everybody can thumbs down in the chat, give me an L. Um, Definitely not great that all of you guys are doing some awesome art and I'm doing the lousy coordination stuff. But I have found it to be really interesting and I've been really enjoying my new job and everything. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. But I also have experience in After Effects, Premiere, Resolve, Unreal Engine, Maya, Houdini, Fusion, Blender, and ShotGrid. I am not a master at any of these, but I do dabble in all of them, and so I can understand a little bit what people are talking about when they are having issues in a lot of these different softwares. Blender is my favorite thing in the entire world. It is personally my favorite 3D software production tool that I use. And I'm also an amateur cheeseburger reviewer, and I train Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. So if you guys want to talk to me about any of that too, let me know. And this is me at the Syracuse Bowl game, which happened coincidentally in San Diego in December. It was a great game, and yeah, go Orange. So I was just going to start with some pretty simple definitions for you guys because I know that a lot of the slang that I'm going to use is probably not common terminology. So we'll start with TechViz. TechViz is a process that uses 3D assets to plan complex shots. It helps filmmakers and designers visualize and refine their ideas before committing to a final plan. It's basically a blueprint of what it's going to look like on shoot days. You can put down cameras, you can put down tracking stickers, you can set up where your green screen is going to be. You can even put in props and major set pieces that you're planning on having in the shot. It's a great way to sort of plan before you even start going into shooting the actual film itself. Then you have previs. That's sort of the first step in visual effects. And previs will come in a lot of different forms, which we'll cover over the remainder of the presentation. But yeah, it's basically just a process of visualizing what you're going to do before you film or create it. And this is a little bit less on the side of setting up cameras, setting up lights, setting up all the technical stuff, and more based on setting up the scene in 3D software or in um, storyboarding or in animatics, whatever you may be using for your project. Um, That takes us to post-viz, which is a technique used in filmmaking to combine live action with visual effects during post-production. It's used to create a visual blueprint for the VFX team and to preview the film for audiences. Post-viz is a relatively newer development in the visual effects industry, um, just being that it really does help out um, directors and cinematographers to see what the final film is going to look like or the final television show is going to look like before um, before all of the final visual effects is done. And obviously, that is the most taxing part. So it's good to sort of have an idea of where you're going before you get into the weeds of things with visual effects software. Storyboarding, this is something that you guys are definitely all familiar with if you guys have worked on any student project or any project at all for that matter. It's the visual planning technique that organizes scenes and actions into a series of drawings or images, and it really just gives you sort of that structure heading into a project. And I don't know if Shayna still has screenshots of storyboards that I used to do, but they were always terrible and they always had stick figures in them and a lot of arrows everywhere and very confusing. But it worked for me, and that's what's most important sort of in that process. Um,
I keep
and
everything
then,
forever.
oh boy, I would love to see those stick figures. That would be that would be a fun one.
Probably have them
Um,
from 205 as well.
oh boy, I don't know if I want to see those. Um, But yeah, no. And then we sort of go into animatics, which is basically just storyboarding animated. Sometimes you'll cut in dialogue, sometimes you'll cut in music, and you'll time up basically how long you're going to be showing each storyboard frame. And that can be really helpful for dictating sort of the pacing of your film before it's made. It's definitely yeah, just really helpful for pacing. I would say that having animatics after you create a storyboard is really helpful, and a lot of people don't do it because it is time taxing sometimes, but it is very beneficial to your projects. And then we go into dailies. So dailies, there's a lot of different ways that dailies is used, but for the most part, it's just the unedited footage that's captured during the day of filming. Sometimes you'll hear it used in the visual effects industry as dailies, as in shots that they go through, that the client will go through every day and give you feedback on. So you'll see that word kind of used interchangeably, but for all intensive purposes, it's the unedited footage. Um, So yeah, they're your definitions. This is just a basis of the visual effects workflow. It's not perfect. I don't think this picture is spot on necessarily. It leaves out a lot of steps, but you can see that previs is really in pre-production. You really need to start your visual effects or whatever previs you may have way before anything else, and that will help you, create all of your assets and create all of your environments because you will have had things that were set up in previs, things that were major decisions that were decided on in previs that will guide you to sort of create all of these things. Um, and after, production, you see post-viz and sometimes you see pre-viz again. Sometimes you see things that didn't work out perfectly on set and you have to recreate pre-viz for it, or maybe things couldn't have even been shot on set and you have to go back and start pre-viz before you can even go into the visual effects. Um, Post-viz is essential because it's right before you do, final visual effects. And it's helpful to see sort of scenes and basic shots mapped out before you go into editorial and final visual effects and sort of piecing everything together in the end. I'll give you guys some more visual ideas of what post-viz looks like. But then you have dailies, and a lot of times visual effects that is done from post-viz goes through editorial channels too before it's even accepted. Um, and then once it's accepted, then you're exporting and sending it to them so that they can compose everything. Um, but this is what the basic workflow looks like. So if you guys are already familiar with this, which I imagine you guys somewhat are, some of you are. Um, it's a little off, but about right. So this is a more visual example of what TechViz, PreViz, and PostViz look like. As you guys can see, TechViz is very technical. You have a lot of camera setups, lighting setups. You have how everything is going to look physically when you are on set. You can imagine that this is really helpful for major productions because it allows people to know where they can and cannot be when shooting. It also tells people, where the cameras are going to be, where all the heavy machinery needs to be. It allows crews to maybe set that up before the day of production, which saves, of course, a lot of time and money, which are the two biggest and interchangeable things when you're trying to go through production. You then have previs. So this is a little bit more advanced previs. That this is what previs looks like in visual effects, but previs is a whole number of things. I mean, as we talked about earlier, storyboarding and animatics are definitely a part of previs and are equally as important as doing rough first drafts of what visual effects will look like. So I always recommend it for people who are starting on projects. Really have a good idea of what you want your project to look like before you even step foot on shoot day. Um, but yeah, this is a very advanced version of previs, so your previs may not look like this. And then post-viz, which is really just exclusively visual effects. You can see it looks a little bit better than previs. It's a little less blocky, maybe a few more polygons in your models. Maybe a little bit more shaders, a few more textures. Things look a little bit closer to what final visual effects will be doing with it, but it isn't quite finished yet. Um, you guys can see it's just something about it looks a little bit wonky. There's not a lot of shadows in here. There's kind of maybe missing some environmental like fog or something. And that's just because rendering out these scenes without all of that is very beneficial in terms of time and money. So it's helpful for people to be able to see these things before final visual effects starts. So these are just two good video examples for you guys so that you guys can see sort of what TechViz and what PreViz and PostViz looks like for those who aren't familiar with it.
Hey everyone. I wanted to give a brief explanation of what TechViz means. At its core, TechViz is the technical documentation of previs and postviz shots to clearly translate our 3D world into a format that can be used by on-set departments to successfully set up a shot or a series of shots. Here at the third floor, we stress the importance of creating visualization that is both beautiful and practical. This means creating shots that have grounding in real-world physics, and in the case of TechViz, grounded by demonstrable measurement and evaluation. To this end, we use everything from physically accurate camera cranes to our own 3D LiDAR scans to ensure that what the client sees in our previs is what they will get on set. In this short commercial spot, you can see how we take very simple previs and expand it into an executable plan for the shoot. Here, we start with LiDAR scan to get an accurate representation of the limits of the environment we will be shooting in. Next, we use our Techno-Dolly rig to ensure that all of our camera movement is within the reach and speed of the crane's limits. Lastly, we carefully measure the position of subjects relative to the camera so that the positioning of the characters is one-to-one with the previs.
So that was a good video demonstration, better than I could have ever explained it as to why you do TechViz, why it's important, and yeah, just really showing you sort of the basics of it, placing people, placing cameras, placing dollies, everything that you want to plan out in terms of physical production. Start with TechViz. And then this will be a video about previs and postviz. It's really more of showing you what it looks like going from sort of just basic non-textured meshes to previs and then to postviz and visual effects.
Storytelling through film and television has evolved over the years to include cutting-edge visual effects. Many of the shots audiences see are a combination of material that has been filmed, as well as material that has been created digitally. There will be characters, environments, and other elements not captured during the shoot that are being produced as computer graphics. As the story progresses in editorial, it can be challenging to evaluate shots and guide them confidently towards a final look without seeing this imagery in the context of the plates that are used. A technique to quickly preview shots in editorial before final delivery is post-visualization, also known as post-viz. During editorial, post-viz fills in the voids to show as much of the story as possible. Computer graphics are added to the live-action photography. Rigs and wires are removed and plates can be merged together. Directors, editors, and producers can evaluate what has been filmed and shape the material to represent the essence of the shots they are looking for. A picture of what the shots, and therefore the finished story, can be quickly produced and communicated. Typical shots worked on in post-viz include shots with empty blue and green screens. Shots that will have digital set extensions or complete set rebuilds are often post-vizzed. Post-viz can be used to demonstrate how multiple passes of action, such as actors photographed in different plates, will come together in a single shot. New shots or scenes portraying CG worlds or environments can be crafted during post-production. Whether a digital prop or a superpower, story-driven visual effects can be creatively illustrated with the characters. From cockpits to vehicles, post-viz can portray CG action that needs to surround or tie into an actor. Digital stunts.
I think you guys get the picture. But yeah, it's basically just a really easy way for editorial to be able to see what the final product is going to look like before, the final product is ready. It's really helpful for a multitude of reasons, from, screenings to just sort of seeing for the editorial team and what the visual effects team, what the movie's going to look like, being able to test it in front of audiences. There are a lot of reasons why it is a super valuable skill set to have and to bring onto your productions. You could imagine that it would be very difficult if you were an editor and you were given 10 green screen plates and told to, comp them together and add in this, and this. It would be too much. So it's really, really nice to have this as your backup and to be able to do this to see a final picture before it's ready. Okay. So now we're going to go into why visualize. So I want you guys to just shout out ideas, whatever you think would be a good idea for this. But so imagine you're on the production crew and you're reading the script, you're looking through the script, figuring out how you're going to film this project, and you get a task from a director or a script action line that looks something like this. A bunch of huge portals open up with armies of heroes pouring out to fight the final boss's army in a rocky terrain at dawn. The bad guy lifts his weapon, causing his horde of enemies to charge towards the portals, all of the heroes using their power to clear the fields of enemies, with some evaporating into thin air, others being slain brutally. Good guys are flying in and some are charging in on foot, all with the ferocity to fight evil incarnate. Like, where do you even start when you're thinking about an action line like that? What are questions that you're going to be asking the director or maybe the rest of the production crew? And feel free to just raise your hand, chime in.
Well, you'd want to know what are some of the featured characters or key narrative beats that need to be hit through that sequence.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and I think that extends also into sort of action too, wh what exactly do you want this action to look like? And I guess from what height are the portals at? Or maybe how many people are running in? I think those are important questions too. Yeah, Ryan.
I think for me, it would probably be, well, we know these are all heroes fighting villains, but I think a good understanding of what the environment might be in is a question that I probably go by. Storyboarding, yes, of course, but when we were talking about pre-tech and previs, it was the idea that like lighting, camera, and those very factors that are supposed to replicate real life physics should be established. And I feel like that would probably be like a good question to ask, like, okay, is this going to be in a wasteland, alien planet, or is this something more real world, like a mountain? Should there be snow? Is it daytime, nighttime? Is there a storm? Stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think asking what the feasibility is of um, what of this shot can be shot practically and what of this shot has to be done in CG. I think that's a huge question too, because it doesn't seem like a lot can be done practically. It seems like a lot of those things can't be done practically. So are we CGing all of it? Are we going to go to a rocky terrain that's snowing and we can perform magic and create portals everywhere? What's going on? So figuring out what's going to be practically shot and yeah, what is gonna be done in CG, I think is important too. Um, yeah, I think also important is like how long, how many days do we have to shoot this? I think another important question is like, um, you know, are we going to be able to control the environment? Sort of what Ryan was talking about. What what are these big things going to look like? I think those are all good questions. Yeah. I think the biggest one is, do we have the time to shoot this? Do we have the money to shoot this? And what of this can be done with CG? I think those are all probably the most important questions when you're going into a shot like this. But yeah, you guys could see why maybe visualizing some of these things quickly, like doing um, a quick 3D comp of some of this stuff, or even just setting up the shot in a 3D software would be really helpful before you start doing anything with this. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people standing around on shoot day having no idea what to do, where to start, where to go. Um, so I know that that happens a lot on student projects. I was I wasn't a student that long ago, and I totally understand how difficult it is to show up to a project and be ready to work, and the rest of the crew isn't ready for you for another, hour or two potentially, maybe even three, because they haven't planned out the scene, they haven't planned out what the lighting's going to be like, and they're scrambling to figure all these things out when they're on set. And theoretically, if you're doing this, professionally, that's a lot of people that are getting paid to stand around and do nothing until you figure out what to do. And so if you guys were wondering which scene he's referencing, it is one of the best scenes of all time from any Marvel movie. I think that portals a whole bunch, yeah. All these portals. I just can't imagine what the action lines is going to look like for that.
Is that everyone? What, you wanted more?
Anyways, I feel like you guys may have seen that, but sorry. No spoilers. I don't mean to spoil this for you guys. I'm sorry. If you haven't seen that movie yet, you gotta see it. I don't know what to tell you. You're missing out. You're missing out on the whole MCU. So, um, but yeah, so more just about why we're visualizing. I know I've already touched on this, but it's always about money. Even time and screening convenience comes down to money. There's a finite amount of money. It's rare to get more when you ask for it in this industry. So you have to plan as much as possible in advance. Um, it saves a lot of time for finals visual effects to not have to like block out the scene before they go in and start doing everything. You could imagine that would take a very, very long time for one person. And so it's really helpful to have some of the basics down, maybe like character animations or basic set props or basic, like rocks or things, or just really basic things that maybe they can just touch up in finals and it'll save them a lot of time. Um, oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the third floor did work on Cap 4. Unfortunately, it's not getting great press around it, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully it ends up doing better and the audience score is higher than the actual. I don't know how do they do it? They do the audience score and they do one other score. I forget what it's called, the critics score.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody cares about the critics, honestly.
At this point,
No,
yeah, I don't know.
no. I want to hear what real people have to say about, you know, the
I
movie.
can give you my honest feedback later.
Okay. But yeah, also just, visualizing helps us give us a rough outline before capital is spent. Tells us, how much we are probably going to have to spend on something to make it a reality. It's very important to visualize, to plan and refine your vision. Sometimes people's ideas are all over the place, and to really put pen to paper, I think starting with storyboarding is helpful, in just sort of, you know, calming your brain down and really focusing on what the linearity of your project is going to look like. And then yeah, also a lot of camera and lighting planning that can happen in TechViz, that will allow you to not be scrambling to find the right lens when you're on set, or scrambling to, place lights or something. You will have everything set up and ready to go so that when you walk onto set, you know exactly where everything is supposed to go. Usually at major studios, doing tech viz allows them to actually have the studio set up and ready as soon as, the crew, actors, director walks onto set. And that is um, very, very crucial. Um, but yeah, just going into time too. I mean, time is money. There's a really funny quote from Parks and Rec. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but it's something like "Time is money, money is time, or time is money, money is power, power is pizza." I think that definitely rings true in that, like, the more time you spend on set, that is more money for everybody. As soon as you go over, that 8 hour mark, it's overtime too at in a lot of places. I shouldn't say everywhere, but yeah, to have extra visualization artists on a project is far cheaper than having the director have to stay around for an extra 3 hours on shoot day, or having extra people on set to do some of these things practically. So that's where sort of visualization really saves you a lot of time and money. It's also really nice to have sort of that space between higher ups at a company and people who are doing the visualization and visual effects. Um, a lot of that is sorted between clients and vendors without ever having to really speak to higher ups, whether that be the producer, the director, or you know, um, like global heads of visual effects or things like that. People like that. Um, just really important to sort of keep the higher ups out of a lot of that stuff. Um, and also it prevents purposelessness, so keeps people from, standing around without a job to do. It's really important that when you get on set, everybody is, focused on set, because you may have a shoot day planned for 3 hours, and then you didn't do any planning leading up to it, and then you're going to take an extra 2 hours. So now the people who were planning on being there for 3 hours are tired after two, and you have to push them to sort of go the extra 3, 4, 5 hours. Yeah, pizza is the bare minimum for sets. That's very true. There should be more pizza on sets. I agree. Um, And yeah, it also just, I touched on this too, but visualization is really helpful for screening. So there are a lot of screenings that happen for major motion pictures and major television shows that you guys never hear about because they're just for a select audience. And, being able to show things that are not done yet to people to get an idea of whether or not they're going to like them, is really helpful. Not only for audiences, but also for directors, producers, heads of studios, it's really helpful for them to see sort of a baseline of what the project is going to look like. Um, and then, yeah, also just sort of the big thing of that mistakes are better early than they are later. If you have a mistake way late on in final visual effects, it's very difficult to walk things back if you don't have post-viz, if you don't have pre-viz. Um, if there's major notes that come up or major revisions that need to be done, it's important to have a baseline to go back to, and say, well, it was good now. Let's make sure it's this way going forward. It's also helpful to sort of get a lot of the issues out of the way that could arise with finals visual effects early on in previs and post-viz. So yeah, this is more just how to visualize, I'm sure that you guys are familiar with this for those of you in Shayna's class, but really like breaking down a script and seeing what you're going to need, what you're not going to need, um, where there's going to be action, where you're going to have to maybe change cuts, maybe um, where you're going to have to change outfits, assets, anything, that you're going to have to change, or that is going to take a lot of effort to do on set. It's important to really like mark up your script and mark up your storyboard and be like, okay, this is going to be the hardest part of this. I can maybe shoot this and then maybe we get into the difficult stuff and then we end with the really hard stuff. It's really helpful for planning before you get onto set. Um, and then, yeah, this is an image of people doing tech viz not on a computer. So going to set, setting up all the cameras, even without the intention of necessarily shooting anybody or anything. But for the next few days, maybe the actors are going to be on set only for 3 out of the 5 days that the crew is there. So being able to get to the site and just check what your options are really important. And that's something that you can do with location scouting, but it is something that you can also do, a day before you shoot, 2 days before you shoot, just planning out the space, feeling it out. I think that's really important too. And then, yeah, just some cool storyboards. And having all these action arrows is really helpful to kind of show, what you want the camera to be doing, what you want characters to be doing. Very, very helpful. So definitely be marking up your storyboards, even if they're terrible. And yeah, definitely mark up your script too. I was going to show you another video about what TechViz looks like, but it looks like we're getting close to the end of time. So I will pass by that or not. All right, so this is where I was going to talk to you guys sort of about the opportunities in visualization and why it's a really awesome place to maybe start your career, or maybe a little bit easier than having a finals visual effects career. I think that a lot of times when I was creating, just projects that I was working on at school, I was always stressed about getting to the final product immediately, and I couldn't stand being in the previs phase and blocking things out. It felt like tedious, and it just felt like I was wasting my time when I could really get to making it, um, as picture perfect as possible. So for new visual effects artists who, may be struggling to find work in a not only very competitive industry, but also an industry that is, kind of ruthless. I think that visualization is a really good opportunity for budding artists who maybe don't have sort of the portfolio to compete with other people and major companies. Um, I think that knowing the previs and post-viz basics is really helpful, not only for people who are going into production roles, but also people who are going to be in art roles. To sort of know the basics of everything is just a very helpful skill to have. Um, I also think that it's important to know that previs and post-viz is supposed to look like bad. It's not supposed to look right. Um, there is a time for visual effects to look right, but at the beginning of your film or at the beginning of your project is definitely not the time for it to be perfect. There's a reason why people go into um, director meetings, into Shayna meetings for their, final capstone to get revisions, week after week after week, because you're trying to make your project better, better, better. And so starting from a very basic place in previs is very, very helpful. Yeah, exactly. Version 100. Yeah. No, that's very true. You guys will yeah. You think that that's not something that actually happens. Yeah, final, final, final. This one is final underscore final V 522. You think that version 100 wouldn't happen, but it does, and it's crazy. Sometimes you need 100 versions, sometimes you need 50 versions to actually get something right. And it's important that you do all of those revisions when things are relatively easy to control, when there's low polygons, when there's less stakes on things. You want to make a lot of those, you know, revisions early on. Um, and then, yeah, for artists who want to go into production, I think that having the basics in compositing and maybe a little bit of 3D too now um, is really important for whatever you want to do in visual effects. Knowing your basics can get you really, really far and can, get you a lot of conversations that you didn't think you maybe were able to have. Just knowing a lot of the basics, knowing what the artist workflow looks like. The artist workflow is a little bit different from the overarching visual effects workflow. Um, so just knowing how that sort of process works is definitely important and very, very helpful no matter where you are in your career and no matter what you're doing in visual effects, whether you're on production or art side. Um, and then, yeah, these are just some funny pictures that I found of previs. Night at the museum. I mean, I would love to go to a party there. That looks really fun. That looks like right up my alley. Whole bunch of animals, dinosaur bones. That sounds pretty cool. And then yeah, you just see a very basic version of the Hulk. I don't even know if his mouth was moving in this, or yeah, I really have no idea to what extent this was close to uh, what they ended up using in finals, but um, yeah, a lot of bare bones animation that looks terrible, but gets the job done and shows the idea, which is all that matters. And then, yeah, so my advice is that you guys should definitely read Shayna's book. Her book is awesome and it's really helpful to just have next to you in case you maybe go into something that you don't know a lot about. Or maybe you're trying to prepare for an interview, or maybe you're trying to do a project of your own. It really depends on, you know, what you want to use it for. But I found it to be a very, very helpful book, and it's a good read. I don't know. I think it's really interesting. And if you're really interested in visual effects and you want to get into the weeds of things, that's a great place to start. So, um, my next piece of advice is don't give up is crucial because there will be a lot of times, especially in visual effects, in filmmaking in general, but in visual effects, that you will be beat down by the process. Just having to do revisions that you don't even think are necessary. Oh, let's go, Kiki. Okay. I love the cover. That's awesome. I didn't even realize that. Wow, I have to look at the cover more. Um, but yeah, no, just don't give up. Like seriously, keep going. Keep working on your art. Keep perfecting your craft. You can only get better, and yeah, you can only learn more. So my next piece, whoever told you not to watch 1,000 YouTube tutorial videos, it's okay. You can watch a YouTube tutorial video every once in a while. You can watch a lot of them if you're in my situation. They are really helpful, and a lot of times you're not going to get that sort of uh, technical lesson in how to use 3D software until you actually get into it and just open up a YouTube tutorial and try to learn how to do a project from somebody else's perspective. Um, and yeah, I'd also say take the leap of faith. And it's really comfortable to stay in positions that, you may be getting salary or you may be getting, benefits. But you're not actually doing exactly what you want. Jumping into something new is a great way to just figure out whether or not you're meant for it. And I know that can be scary for a lot of time for a lot of people, and that's not necessarily financially reasonable for a lot of people. Um, but I definitely think just even even if it's not, going for that job or going for that internship, maybe it's, reaching out to somebody that you haven't reached out to in a while who's in visual effects, or reaching out to your contact list that you made on your trip out to New York. It really depends, but always just take that leap of faith, make those connections, and then just be available, be essential, and anticipate people. It's really helpful to have things ready for people in visual effects before they're even wanting them. Um, sometimes, oh, minor 911, but no worries. Um, yeah, no, just anticipating what your higher ups are going to need. And I think that goes for any job necessarily, um, really just anticipating what your company is going to need before they need it, before they even think they need it. That means asking a lot of questions about things that you're working on. Oh, maybe I'm working on this shot, but this shot, it needs to be changed because it's going to impact this shot. Do we need to change all of these other ones? It really depends. But yeah, just anticipate, yeah, anticipate. I think that's the most important thing. Um, yeah, that's all for me. I tried to, sorry, it was, I was getting on a little bit long there, but yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I am not able to talk about what I'm working on at all, but I would love to talk to you guys just sort of about like my job and like sort of what the day to day maybe looks like. Maybe that would be helpful to you guys, but overall, yeah, you guys are doing great things by showing up to these meetings, and you're really putting yourself ahead in your productions. So, yeah, thank you all for coming and listening to my TED Talk, and I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you guys. So,
Shall we stop sharing and then
yeah,
on
sure.
questions?
Yeah. Um, oh,
I can stop sharing. Okay.
there we go.
Thanks. That was great.
Thank you.
The emphasis on planning. I like how you brought it back to student work a lot, even though it's what you're doing professionally now, but why that's so important in student work, and often something that's really neglected to students' peril, especially when they jump into like a big project and neglect to like really plan everything out. It's always a good lesson.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been in a situation where I was, the head visual effects artist on a capstone production, and was given, no on-set supervision roles or anything, and, wasn't able to plan things out in advance, didn't really know when shoot days were going to be, and so really being able to plan these things out is definitely helpful. And I think that students a lot of times neglect that just because we're so caught up in everything else that we're doing. But it's important. So I recommend it.
And I like how you said that the kind of previs materials should kind of look bad early on, because that's when you can make those changes and you can be nimble with your creative choices um, before you're committed to a very particular aesthetic look, have invested a ton of time into something. Much easier to kind of do it in those rough drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it looks like going to finals visual effects and, you know, having to make major changes, major revisions. It would certainly delay the production by a lot. So it's good that we have previs for visual effects now.
So
Um, do you want to say a little bit more about what the company does besides blockbuster features?
Oh yeah. So we do a lot of television projects. We do experiential things. So maybe there's visual effects on a screen on a ride that you go on, or maybe they're trying to plan out an entire theme park. I think my company helped plan out Super Mario Brother World at Universal Studio. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but yeah, just being able to like really have a plan of these things before you go into it is super important across all types of visual media and experiential media. I think it's, really important to have a baseline as to what these things are going to look like. And of course, the tech viz, pre-viz, post-viz process looks very different when you're doing experiences or when you're doing TV shows or when you're doing feature films. And depending on whether or not you're doing animation or whether or not you're using mocap, I think there are a lot of, different avenues that you can go down with your production for visual effects. Um, and yeah, it was just cool to know that my company was doing all these things. I didn't even realize that, you know, there was planning that was like serious technical planning that was involved in the production of like a theme park or a ride at a theme park. Um, I just would have never imagined that visual effects would exist there too. And of course it does. I don't know why I would neglect it, but yeah.
Gaming as well.
Oh, gaming too. Yeah, we do gaming stuff too. Not as much gaming anymore, but yeah, certainly a lot of gaming and gaming adaptations. But um yeah.
Cool. And you are not the only alum who's at your company.
Yes. Oh, forgot to mention that. If you guys, I don't know how many of you guys know Winnie. She's awesome. I'm working with her. Um, she has been like my mentor, which is really funny because I didn't even meet her in SU Post. Um, I met her through LinkedIn, seeing that she was also a fellow Shayna alumni, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. This company is hiring, and I see somebody working there who I may have a connection with, and I took that leap. I reached out to her, not having any idea who she was, having zero contact with her at all. And it developed into something really awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, super grateful to her, but she is a rock star. She is also a production coordinator and she's she's got it down. She's good. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's been there a while now.
Yeah, I think she's been there for 2 years. I think it was her first job out of school. I'm not 100% sure, but she also says hi to everybody. So she would have loved to make it, but she is covering for me right now. So I appreciate that for her. I'm technically on my lunch, but it's okay. Um,
Well, unless anyone has any other questions, I think we can wrap up and get you back to work. So thank you for joining us, Nate.
of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. Would you say this is like the treat for alumni is to come back and
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I see Rowan, I see Kiki, I just, it was really fun being able to do all of Shayna's classes. And I felt like the crew that I had was just, oh, okay. Hi, Ryan. Oh, I thought you were saying that facetiously. My bad. Um, no, yeah, I think it's just really cool to go back into these meetings and, see alumni that I've worked on projects with and be able to catch up with them and see how they're doing. And just knowing you guys are also doing all really cool things is a cool place it's a cool place to see all you guys and check in. So I appreciate you guys coming and showing up and yeah, and listening. And I wish you well on your ventures moving forward and your projects that you may or may not be working on right now. So
Nate?
Thanks again, Nate.